The border crisis is slowing down a little bit, but there's a lot to talk about still. So the numbers say that the number of children from Central America that are, just showing up at our borders via coyotes and whoever else is dwindling a little bit. There's still a lot of conversation here in the Northeast about how many young people from Central America will end up here temporarily or perhaps long-term. Concerns from Rhode Islanders for immigration law enforcement have been expressed, and Terry Gorman, who heads that organization, is here tonight to talk to me about some of these matters. Terry and I have pointed conversations sometimes. He's a good man with a lot of good thoughts, and I've got some questions about what his protest is, and we have some word from the delegation as to what they think about what's going on, and we've got the latest report on that. So stay tuned for that on My State of Mind. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go right to some of what's looking at the rundown. Yeah, they are, and this could get really ugly if it's not ugly enough already. Well, we're a little bit touchy today. All of a sudden you come off the script and you don't like the questions. Not so good. Still wondering if this guy is in or out and how that's going to impact the mayoral race. We'll talk to you about that coming up here in just a second. And it's really, Ralph, really, Dennis the Menace, really, and hey, great time of year. Yes. Jess tells me she doesn't like football. She'd rather watch soccer. Kevin and I are laughing at her at the start of this program today. It's like, what? Let's go. Dig in. Yeah, it's not good because folks like Hezbollah and others are now kind of creeping around this whole situation. The headline, yes, our Secretary of State says he's making progress. Really? Hamas is defiant because reportedly Hamas might be getting some more terrorist help from outside the region. Here's the latest from CBS. Actually, that is just some video that describes the scene, and I think, without a narration from the network, we could simply say this is some serious war going on right now, weeks old now in Gaza, and you've got, over 600 citizens, Palestinian citizens who've lost their lives, and more than or close to 36 Israeli soldiers now. So this is not a skirmish like we've come to see over the last 10 years or so. This is a serious battle, and we've got Hezbollah that's saying, hey, listen, we may go in and help Hamas, and gosh knows whether the terrorist organization might end up joining forces there. Get ready for this rough ride. I mean, we could have an all-out crisis in the Middle East, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time in our recent history. I'm hoping that Secretary Kerry is up to the task, but I'm not so sure because there doesn't seem to be a lot of trust right now between the Israeli government and our own. We'll see. It's day to day, and it doesn't look good. Next item. Coming back home. Oh, really? We don't like questions from the press now because we're higher than thou, holier than thou, and on script, and don't impact my script. I had a laugh out loud today when our radio newsroom came home to the station with some audio from Gina Raimondo's. She had some community event, and the press was asking questions about this latest ad that she has with this iron worker who reportedly had a DUI, and also there's some discussion, not verified, but some discussion from the press that he may have had workman's comp during the time that he claims in his ad that Angel Rivera screwed everything up because he hasn't worked for the last few years. Listen in.
In your ad, you're saying that your star in the ad there is unemployed. Is he on workers' comp?
He's now driving to Connecticut for a job.
He is. Mm-hmm. Is he on workers' comp?
I don't know.
I've hardly worked in 3 years. Angel's not a bad guy, but he's more of the same.
Gina's saving worker pensions. She's got guts. That's what we need to create jobs, too.
Want to distance yourself from him, knowing he had a DUI infraction?
No, look, that's unfortunate that he has a DUI. It's inexcusable. He's paid the penalty. But right now, we have to focus on jobs. And I'm running for governor to get people back to work. And specifically to get people back to work rebuilding Rhode Island, rebuilding schools, rebuilding roads, rebuilding bridges.
Let me give you some advice, some friendly advice. Get testy with the press, they'll get testy with you. You can't stay on script all the time. Now, if this guy had a DUI, so what? I mean, I don't care that he had a DUI. It's not the end of the world. But if he was on workman's comp during the time that he says he hadn't worked in a 3-year period of time, that's a little different, right? So you've got a couple $1 million in your campaign fund to hire really smart people to vet and research this kind of stuff. We'll see if that question from the press ends up being legitimate. But know this, when somebody asks you, is he on workman's comp, and you just say, I don't know, you know, that's not real good. What you should do is say, you know, interesting question, I'm not aware, let me get back to the campaign and we'll get back to you. See, that's what a diplomat does. That's what a person who's actually got empathy for people does. But when you are holier than thou now and thinking that you've got some earned position in this campaign and that the script is more important than real people and real questions, you got yourself a problem here. Take a good look in the mirror, remember who you are, where you came from, and become real. Because Snippy doesn't get elected. Next item. I don't know if he's in or he's out, and he doesn't know either. He's had a couple of different answers offered in a couple of different places. He is Dan Harrop, the psychiatrist with an MBA, Republican, who ran in 2006 for mayor of Providence and got just 16% of the vote. But this year, 16 to 20% could be meaningful, could be barter material, could be all of that. He wants to take the city into receivership, bankruptcy, if you will, and he's not sure if anybody else is going to catch fire here. He's got very grave concerns over Buddy Cianci being the mayor, but he told me today maybe not more than the concerns about the Democrats.
We need to see who comes out of the primary with the Democrats. I think that's important. We need to see how much people respond to our message with the city. And we need to make a determination, which is difficult, about exactly how much my votes might be transferable to other candidates at this point. It may not be transferable at all, in which case I just ride it to the end.
Well, he's saying he's not going to make a decision on that until late October. He'll be on the ballot. I've talked to you about this before. If he's on the ballot and he quits and says, I endorse somebody else, most people won't even understand what he's saying or learn about it. Again, the strangest political year I've seen in a long time, and we'll see if we have a 2 or 3 person race when it comes time for general election and the City of Providence mayoralty. Speaking of people who are running for office, the Lieutenant Governor's office is up for grabs, right? And the now Secretary of State, Ralph Malles, is running for it. We learned today that old Ralph has a little bit of a housing problem and solved it by renting property from Governor Chafee. Now, look, you know, this is so funny. If you read the story, Ralph doesn't say what he's paying in rent, and the Chafee administration says, look, it's fair market value. This is another classic Dennis the Menace, Ralph Malles thing. Now, look, you know, reportedly the place he was renting foreclosed on the landlord, and so he's running around, busy guy, running a campaign in the Secretary of State's office looking for a place to live. I empathize with that. But this is the inside the bubble stuff that the governor, that the Secretary of State just don't seem to get. When 2 state officers are contracting with each other on a month-to-month basis for a rental residence, you need to talk about who's paying who what. Not by law, but by common sense. I don't know that Link Chafee and Ralph Malles have anything going on with each other. I mean, Malles bailed him out of that Christmas tree crisis this past year. But you got to know that there's no quid pro quos and that the rent is commensurate. What you should do is just stay away from that dynamic altogether. But minimally, talk about the money. Neither are doing that, and it's just another classic example of just not getting it. But he wants to be your lieutenant governor. And finally, camp is open. It's football season. You know what's amazing to me when you look at this video? Roll it, Kev. Love watching this. Gronk is healthy. Now look, you know, I'm a Giant fan, so I'm not that excited about, you know, the Patriots. I mean, they're my second consideration, but a true football fan doesn't have a second consideration. I may try to draft him, though, in my fantasy football league draft if he's that healthy. But what's great is the fans. Look at all the fans that show up for these sessions. And there's no sport really like it. I mean, in baseball, they go to the games, but they can't go to the practices like this. It's great stuff. It's this time of year. Oh, can't wait for football season. Jess would rather go to a soccer game. Now you know what I have to deal with here. When we come back, Terry Gorman and his perspective on this terrible immigration issue that we've got going on right now. Stay with us.
president's asking for is a blank check. He wants us to just throw more money at the problem without doing anything to solve the problem.
Republicans want to deploy the National Guard. Democrats don't.
Why send National Guard to the border? These kids aren't sneaking across the border. They're coming and turning themselves into the first person they see.
Republicans want each child to get a deportation hearing within 7 days of their arrival. Democrats, like California's Javier Becerra, say that's not enough time. Republicans say they won't agree to any new funding without changes to a 2008 law requiring every unaccompanied minor from Central America to get an asylum hearing.
Stuff is heartbreaking. It really is. Here's today's headline. They say we're seeing more child refugee cases here in Rhode Island, but the last few days, last week or so, it's kind of slowed down. So it's a little bit of an ebb and flow. Terry Gorman from Rhode Islanders for Immigration Law Enforcement, no stranger to the state and the broadcast. Tell me.
Well, I'm at my wit's end, Dan. I think in the last several weeks, my hair is starting to turn white. This is bothering me that bad. I've never had anything get me this upset in almost my whole life as this situation is. Our government, in my opinion, is selling us out as we sit here, starting with President Obama. If anyone doesn't think that this was an orchestrated thing, all they have to do is look and see that when he came out and said he was so shocked that this happened in June, 52,000 children on the border, his administration put out a request for proposals to transportation companies to transport these children across the United States in April. There was another one put out in January to assist getting these children across Mexico. The Mexican government is sitting there, some of the toughest immigration policies in the world, watching all of these people that broke across their border ride on the top of a train through the middle of Mexico without ever bothering them and making sure they get deposited on the United States border and told to just run across the border and tell the Border Patrol agent you're giving up.
So your theory is set this up, take the immigration debate to a high level via this crisis, and try to get the big picture resolved. And so that's his plan. Is it? Am I putting words in your mouth?
Well,
is that your
no,
theory?
I don't think it's get the big picture resolved. I think it's to overwhelm the United States with this problem. And if you look at it, it's 52,000 children, they said. That doesn't include the adults. They claim right now there's like 110,000 altogether. They're being distributed all across the country.
Well, there's been, I've seen a report that we have 110,000 adults.
No, all together.
All together.
All together, yep.
But primarily we're
Combined.
dealing with Central American children here.
Yes, yeah, and my heart goes out to that children. I said that in the lead-in. That
it's
look
hard.
at that little guy.
These are kids.
Yeah.
These are kids.
Yeah, my heart goes out to them. But what I think the solution should be is I think Obama should just say, okay, we have all of these children, 52,000 children in all of these places down on our border.
And counting.
And counting, and it could be
90, they said.
90,000 by October.
It's interesting they got a projection that they know by October it might be 90,000.
Yes, I'm telling you, that's what my opinion is. But there's 52,000 children there now. I just lost my train of thought there, I'm sorry. But we're going to increase that to 90,000 children by October. Where are we going to put them? What are we going to do?
Well, Governor Patrick has already said, listen, we got a place in Westover.
Yeah, Otis Air Force Base. Yeah.
At least Governor Patrick, though, has been direct and upfront. You can have an honest debate with him.
Thank you.
Our governor is passive aggressive, and God knows if he's taking phone calls, he's making deals. You can't keep track of what he wants to say and what he wants to do.
If you look at the statement that he made, Dan, I think this is ludicrous to say the least. He said, no one from the Obama administration has contacted anyone from my administration.
Formally.
Well, originally he didn't put the formally in, but he said that now he changed it to formally. He said no one from my administration has gotten a hold of anyone from the Obama administration. But we're staying in touch. Well, if they didn't call him and he didn't call them, how do we arrive at staying in touch?
Well, regardless of what you think about this issue, dealing with the governor, our governor, and having an honest, brokered conversation about this is a difficult thing. And then there's the federal, easy for me to say, the federal delegation. And when we come back, you'll hear a snippet from them and get Terry's reaction. Stay with us.
To make sure that they are treated humanely, that they are housed appropriately, and recognize some of these children are very, very young.
I think the systemic problem is, go to the root cause, go down there to these countries, disrupt the trafficking network, be very aggressive with intelligence, with police activities.
If you're listening to, David Cicilline takes a meeting and now, he wants to talk about, and who doesn't want to acknowledge that these kids and their concerns and their care is important. But Jack Reed there, Terry, is kind of talking about some kind of, earnest intelligence effort on our part. That runs counter to your theory that the president, he's close to the president, that the president kind of set this whole thing up. What I am surprised about, I got to get this out, that if in fact, booing your theory, if in fact we've been somewhat horrified and traumatized by this, why aren't we doing a propaganda campaign into Central America, making sure that they understand that this thing is not what it's all cooked up to be? Now, we're getting a little bit of that in the last week or so, but I mean, the old days, we had a Voice of America plan in any country to convince anybody of what we thought was the truth. And the idea that we can't communicate, that this is not the candy land that they think it is intriguing to me.
I think then the solution to that is that if we could gather a group of those kids, feed them, get them up to snuff nutritionally, give them all of their shots, and send them back to Honduras or wherever. Just 50. Problem solved. They would know, that would be communicated almost immediately. Holy mackerel, they sent all these kids back. I spent $7,000 sending my child to a coyote, and now they're back. I got to come up with another $7,000. I mean, how do they come up with that $7,000 in the first place if they're in Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador under the conditions that people claim that they're under?
What's your theory? What's your theory on where they come up with the 7 Gs?
I don't know. I have no clue of that. I don't have an answer to that. I think of all of these things. Who's giving them that money? If they have $7,000 and they don't have enough food to eat, and they claim they don't have enough clothes for their children, how do they have $7,000 to give to a coyote?
I don't know. So what are we going to do here? I mean, Congress is now in a subset battle. We've had a larger immigration stalemate, and now we've got a crisis stalemate. Republicans want to see that there's a 7-day turnaround on these decisions by judges real quick. Democrats don't think that's possible. It's the only way that Republicans will fund this $3.7 billion that the president's asking for. And meanwhile, the whole place is all coagulated, and we're going to have all sorts of kids coming to the Northeast and everywhere else in the country. I don't know what the answer is here.
Well, I don't really know what the answer is either, Dan. But we can't keep it like we have it. In my opinion, the Republicans are making more of a political thing out of this than the Democrats are. The Democrats have been just pushing this to let everybody in, basically, for a while. And the Republicans, I thought they had some solid ground to stand on. But now I think they're looking foolish by grasping at all these different things. No, we're not going to do this. No, we're not going to do that unless you do this. My opinion, the solution is, first thing we have to do is close the border, period. We can't send the National Guard down there. That's a great idea. Rick Perry has a great idea to send the National Guard. But basically, the National Guard's
these
going
kids are
to
just handing themselves over. I mean, it's not like they're combatants, for
I
heaven's
know.
sake.
And even if they were, the National Guard can't do anything about it. It's like Benghazi.
They're not cops. They're army guys.
No, it's like Benghazi. We had Marines guarding the embassy that didn't have bullets in their guns. I mean, what are we doing to our country?
But the border closure is part of the bigger immigration negotiation. So
yeah, if we would believe that Obama would do that, I think reasonable Republicans would go along with a lot of things.
Well, I think reasonable Republicans need to make that deal to prove whether he's a president of his word or not. But doing the old I don't trust him, so we're not making the deal,
Yeah.
is just bad politics, I think.
Well,
There's bad politics on both sides.
But that's, you're saying the right word, in my opinion, is the politics. It's kids. We have to do something. Something has to get done with them. You know, my solution is, you know, feed them, get them up to snuff, give them
Send
all
them
their
back.
shots, and send them back. I think that's the perfect solution. And we're
Well, we'll see.
that, solving the humanitarian crisis that way.
All right.
And not
So you're
doing
having a
anything bad to
rally.
the
You're having a rally to say what?
Yet, well, we just to get the message to the governor that he would prevent him from accepting these children. I go to bed every night, Dan, the last couple of weeks, and waiting to wake up in the morning and see Governor Chafee on TV shaking his fist at everybody with that big howdy-doody smile, in my opinion, saying, "I saved Rhode Island. I only had to take in 1,000 of these kids. They wanted to send me 2,000, but we took in 1,000.
When's your rally?
And Saturday at noontime at the Smith Street side of the State House. And we have a bunch of the people seeking political office coming.
All right.
So we'd like to have a lot of people come.
All right. Saturday. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dan.
Be right back. You got thoughts on this immigration dilemma, this humanitarian crisis? Call us 228-1886, email or Facebook post or tweet. Here's a voicemail reacting to last night's show.
What a breath of fresh air he is. I hope people will take him into consideration when they go vote. He's very knowledgeable. Thank you.
That's a reaction to John Carlovali's pretty good visit here. He was impressive, no doubt. All righty, we'll see you tomorrow on the radio at noon and tomorrow night at 7:30 on MyRI TV. Good night.